For around $200 you can buy an Intel i5-2400, but for the same, actually even less, for around $170 you can get the older i5-2400, a H61 motherboard and 16GB of DDR3 memory. Of course, the i5-8400 is much faster in benchmarks, but when it comes to gaming, it can offer excellent value, especially with optimized titles. Hey guys, the i5-2400 is a CPU that we looked at in recent videos, especially with the HP Elite 8200 small form factor PC, as my machine came with that processor. So today we're gonna look at two things. We will take a close look at the i5-2400 with benchmarks and some gameplay, but we will also revisit this cheap H61 motherboard from China. I got quite a few comments, so I definitely wanted to use it again, and I found a few things that are not so good. So do stick around until the end. So the i5-2400 has a base clock of 3.1 GHz, but can turbo up to between 3.2 and 3.4 GHz. We've got 6 MB of level 2 cache, TDP of 95 watts, and on the second-hand market you can pick one of these up for around $30 to $40. So let's quickly put a system together. We've got the H61 motherboard from China, the i5-2400 of course, and a Cooler Master Hyper TX3 Evo. 2 sticks of 8GB DDR3 memory, so we have a total of 16GB in dual channel configuration. I will put a link where you can get these two items down below in the description. And I've upgraded the video card. We now have an Asus Radeon RX 570 with 4GB of VRAM. In Cinebench we're getting a score of 420, and that seems to be correct for this processor. User benchmark tells us that the processor performs as expected. We're sitting at the 52nd percentile. The quad-core scores, they show up as green, but the single-core scores are yellow, and I will explain this later shortly. Let's have a look at some 3D Mark results. The blue bar is our i5-2400, and the red bar is a different system with an i7-4790S. In CloudGate and in Skydiver, we can see that the i5-2400 is behind, but in Firestrike, where we are more limited by the video card, the performance difference is very minor. And here we have Rise of the Tomb Raider in DirectX 12, and the graphics API seems to make a difference with these slower processors. At least in this game, the i5-2400 is going pretty strong, even at the low resolution settings where the processor is usually the bottleneck. So this is a game you can play maxed out with very high details and still get 60 FPS. Dirt Rally seems to be more dependent on the processor. Even at ultra details, the i5-2400 is behind, but across all the detail settings, we're still getting playable performance. Metro 2033 Redux, that's an older game, and there seems to be a trend that the older games require a stronger processor. And across the board, the i5-2400 is behind the 4790S. Now the ultra details, the reason they're so low is because it uses super sampling, anti-aliasing, and the video card is just not powerful enough. But does it run Crysis? Yes it does. Not as well as the i7-4790S, but still quite playable. For example, if you use high details, you should be getting around 60 FPS. Here we have For Honor, and that is a more modern title, and it seems to be very well optimized. Look at that, across all the detail settings there's virtually no difference, so this is a fantastic game to run on an i5-2400. Deus Ex Mankind Divided, another DirectX 12 game, and apart from the low and medium detail settings, we're really limited by the graphics card. So a middle point is probably going for high details, around 60 FPS, and you get the same performance as on the i7-4790S. And this is the newest game I've got in the benchmarks. This is Strange Brigade. It can run in DirectX 12 and in Vulkan. It runs a little bit faster in DirectX 12, but I wanted to have some Vulkan results. And you can really see that this is well optimized. The choice of processor doesn't make a difference. You can just crank up the details and we're getting around 60 FPS. And now I'm going to put some gameplay on the screen. Look at the bottom for some details about the game title and the detail settings. Now, one aspect of the performance which is hard to measure is snappiness and loading times, and this is definitely an area where the i7-4790S was a lot stronger with the loading times. So on the H61 platform we only have SATA 2 with 3 gigabits per second, and that probably played a big difference. Also, the i7-4790S uses faster memory. It runs at 1600 megahertz instead of 1333. So FPS aside, loading times were definitely noticeably slower on the i5-2400. And now we're going to follow up on that Chinese H61 motherboard. It's quite affordable. I did a review recently and it was a fairly positive review. There were a few minor odd things, but all in all it was quite decent. You asked me to check out the VRM temperatures. I have a thermal probe, so that came in handy. Under idle, 34 degrees, under load, 54 degrees. I must say that the Cooler Master cooler is actually providing some decent airflow around that area, so that definitely helps. And now we're going to talk about a few things that I got comments on, and yeah, that unfortunately don't work so well. The fan speed, it's locked at 100%. I couldn't actually find a option in the BIOS to change that, so that might be an issue. You might have to get a manual fan controller or just buy one of those 3-pin fans that are quite out of the box. The next issue was to do with the PCI Express slot. Physically it is a 16x slot, but in reality it only has 8 lanes. And it is PCI Express Generation 2. Now, that worried me at first, but looking at all the benchmark results, and I had some other results on file with an i5-2400, it seems to be performing just fine, and I don't think that impacts too much on the performance. But there's more. Turbo Boost is not working at all. On the i5-2400 we should see boost clocks up to 3.4 GHz, but 3.1 is the highest that the chip will do on this motherboard. Now again, there's not a huge performance impact. Even with single core performance, which should turbo up to 3.4 GHz, we would be losing at most 10%. But yeah, it's still disappointing that this feature isn't working. So all in all, when I first reviewed the motherboard, I caught the weird layout and the fast Ethernet port, but now we have a longer list of negatives with this board. So you might actually consider the alternative, which is going for a second-hand brand name board. You can get these readily on AliExpress. I will definitely take a look and maybe we will see such a board on the channel soon. So let's summarize this video. The i5-2400 is still going strong in 2018, offers good value, but of course it has its limitations. It's not great for benchmarking and pure CPU tasks such as rendering or transcoding. Here a modern i5 will be much stronger. We also saw that some games, especially older ones, are showing a noticeable performance difference, but mostly newer games, especially those with DirectX 12 or Vulkan support, they worked just as well on the old i5-2400. Sorry about the H61 motherboard. I should have spent a little bit more time and noticed the other issues. So what I did, I put a pinned comment underneath the video, and I will also leave my opinion as a review on the Banggood website. I still think that this motherboard can be interesting. It's got a unique small form factor, and really it hasn't given me any issues. It was rock solid, and even without the working turbo and with the 8x PCI Express slot, the performance checks out and is solid. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what are your thoughts on the i5-2400. Maybe you're still using one. Maybe you're thinking of upgrading from a socket 775 to this platform. Prices for socket 1155 are really interesting at the moment. Of course, they have their limits. They can't compete with the latest and greatest, but it's all about the value, frames per second for your money. That's what this is all about. And as always, guys, if you found this video interesting, why not subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Give it a like, leave a comment, share the video, and I shall see you soon with another one.